All right, let's talk about an economic idea that literally built empires, was basically declared dead for centuries, and surprise, surprise, it's now staging a huge comeback in today's headlines. And look, this isn't just some dusty academic debate, right? We're talking about a mindset that once forged empires, and its echoes, well, they're directly impacting everything from the price of your groceries to the global balance of power. Seriously. Okay, so let's dive right in. The term we're talking about is mercantilism. And if you've been paying any attention to global economics lately, you've probably seen this word popping up more and more. And I want to be clear, this isn't some fringe theory we're digging up. I'm talking about the world's most influential financial voices. The Financial Times, Bridgewater, you name it. They're all pointing to the exact same trend. They're asking a really important question. Are the big anxieties of our time, stuff like globalization and national security, actually causing this very old way of thinking to bubble back up to the surface? So to really get what they're talking about, we have to go back. Way back. We're talking about the era between the 1500s and the late 1700s, a time when kings and empires played a totally different economic game. So, at its heart, mercantilism is a system that's all about state control. The core belief? It was simple. A nation's power came directly from its wealth. And by wealth, they meant one thing, its stockpile of gold and silver. So the government's number one job was to do everything it possibly could to make that stockpile bigger, even if, and this is key, even if it meant hurting other nations in the process. And that leads us to the most crucial point here, this zero-sum mindset. Think of it like this. Mercantilists believe the world's wealth was a fixed pie. That's it. There's only so much to go around. So for your kingdom to get a bigger slice, well, another kingdom had to get a smaller one. Trade wasn't about everybody winning. It was basically a form of economic warfare. And believe me, this way of thinking dominated for centuries. It all started with Spain hoarding all that gold from the Americas. Then it was perfected by guys like Colbert and France, who used state power to build up industries. And, surprise, surprise, it eventually led to major conflicts over trade, everything from the Anglo-Dutch Wars right up to the tensions that sparked the American Revolution. So to win this crazy zero-sum game, nations developed a pretty clear playbook. First up, hoard gold and silver at all costs. They called this bullionism. Second, they used super high tariffs, that's protectionism, to shield their own businesses from any foreign competition. They also created these massive state-backed monopolies, you've probably heard of the Dutch East India Company, to completely control trade routes. And maybe most critically, they used colonialism to exploit other lands for cheap raw materials and then force those colonies to buy back the finished goods. And you know what backed all of this up? Raw military force. Powerful navies were absolutely essential to protect those precious trade routes and enforce those monopolies. In the mercantilist era, you really couldn't separate economics from military might. They were two sides of the very same gold coin. And then, everything changed. In 1776, the very same year as the American Declaration of Independence, by the way, a Scottish philosopher named Adam Smith published a little book called The Wealth of Nations. And let me tell you, it was an absolute bombshell. It completely dismantled the entire mercantilist worldview. Smith came along and just painted a completely different picture. He argued that wealth isn't some fixed pie that we all have to fight over. No, it's something that can be created. Wealth isn't about hoarding gold in a vault. It's about a nation's ability to produce things of value. And trade? He said it could be a positive-sum game where both sides actually come out ahead. I mean, think about how radical this was. Smith's idea was that instead of fighting over the slices, we could all work together to bake a much, much bigger pie for everyone. And his central critique was just devastatingly simple. He basically pointed out that all those mercantilist policies, the high tariffs, the monopolies, they just made everything more expensive for ordinary people. It was a system designed to make a few privileged merchants in the state incredibly rich, while the average person, the average consumer, ended up paying the price. And those ideas, well, they laid the foundation for the next 200 years of global trade. Okay, so that brings us right back to our original question. If Adam Smith's ideas so clearly won the day, why on earth are we talking about mercantilism now? Well, because some of its core features, they seem to be making a comeback. I mean, just look at the parallels. The high tariffs they used to protect English weavers, you can see a clear echo in today's tariffs on imports from places like China. That state support for the Dutch East India Company, it looks a whole lot like the massive government subsidies we're seeing for key industries today. That old push for self-sufficiency in the colonies, It kind of sounds a lot like modern Buy American policies, right? And the obsession with gold, well, that's been replaced by a modern obsession with currency values and foreign reserves. So, if this way of thinking really is returning, what's at stake? What's the big deal? Well, the critics of this whole shift argue that we are running the risk of repeating some of the worst mistakes of the past. You see, this zero-sum view could trigger a really nasty downward spiral. We're talking about retaliatory trade wars that shrink the entire global economy for everyone. It means higher prices for all of us, for consumers, as competition gets choked off. And it basically invites inefficiency and maybe even corruption as governments, not the market, start picking winners and losers. The ultimate risk here is that we sacrifice shared global growth for what might seem like a short-term national gain, and in the process, dangerously ramp up tensions between world powers. So, we'll leave you with this question to chew on. Is the world really turning its back on the ideas of Adam Smith and going back to that fixed pie thinking of the 1700s? Or are we just seeing brand new challenges, things like national security, supply chain resilience, that maybe require a different set of tools? Honestly, the answer to that question is going to define the global economy for decades to come.